So I've just seen a video, which is a press conference between Vladimir Klitschko and Alex Lepai. Lepai, I don't know how to pronounce that guy's name. But anyway, it was Klitschko's last fight in Germany earlier this year, and it was a press conference. But a few minutes into Klitschko speaking, the American boxer Shannon Briggs barges into the room and he comes out with this rant. And basically just makes himself look like an ass. And I want to discuss this a little because the way I see it, this is exactly the sort of fighters boxing doesn't need. Just so you know, Shannon Briggs is a former two-time world champion. He's a pretty good boxer. I won't take anything away from him in terms of his ability. He's a good boxer. Not outstanding, and certainly not as big as he makes himself out to be. I mean, he's a few decent wins in his record. He's, for example, Ray Mercer would be one that stands out. He defeated George Foreman, but that was Foreman at the very end of his career. He's also lost to Sultan Ibragimov. He's lost to Lennox Lewis, and he's lost to Vitaly Klitschko. So anyway, he barges into this press conference, all hyped up. He looks like he's on steroids or something. He's in good shape, but he looks really hyper, like he's on drugs or something. And he just repeats the same things over and over again, like, why won't you face me? Face a real man. This guy's a bum. Why won't you face me? You get the idea. Just the sort of trash talking that was typical of sort of the 70s heavyweight era, and the 90s for that matter. But the thing about trash talking in boxing is sometimes it does serve a purpose. It can motivate interest in big fights. But what we saw here was it was the actions of an idiot. Klitschko, of course, being the true sportsman that he is, tried to defuse the situation. He didn't respond. He just saw this guy for what he was, an idiot. He just he didn't humour Briggs. Alex Lepai wasn't too happy, obviously, that he was being called a bum. That's very disrespectful. I don't care who you are, I don't care what the circumstances. To call another fighter a bum, I think that's... you'd never hear one of the Klitschkos saying something like that. Even if Alex Lepai isn't a great fighter, I don't know much about the guy, but regardless, you just don't do that if you're a professional sportsman. Briggs was basically acting like Mr. T out of Rocky III. And he said that himself. In fact, he almost was proud of the analogy. And he kept saying to one of Klitschko's trainers, remember, Mr. T killed Mickey. Mickey was Rocky's trainer, if you know the series. So he was acting just like a loudmouth thug. The argument he seemed to be making was he was frustrated that Klitschko hasn't fought him yet, as in Vladimir Klitschko. But there's other ways to do it. There's other ways to call for a contest. Whatever you think of the fact that Vladimir Klitschko hasn't fought Briggs yet, that sort of attitude and that sort of behaviour is just... it discredits the sport, especially from someone who's supposed to be a professional sportsman like Briggs. Number one, he's not anywhere near as good as he's making himself out to be in the video. And before I get attacked for that, no, I wouldn't say it to his face, or at least, you know, I don't take anything away from him. He's a good fighter, but I just think it's typical of sort of the loudmouth antics that David Haye and Derek Chisora came out with as well. And Klitschko handled those guys with the same sort of sportsmanlike conduct, which in my opinion is one of the reasons why Klitschko is a great fighter, because he conducts himself well. Not only is he actually a very good boxer anyway, but he conducts himself well, and I believe that is important in the sport. You know, to be a world heavyweight champion, you're potentially inspiring millions of people, so it is important actually. Briggs was just mouthing off, and then as he left the arena he said there were some women there, and he was sort of like, sorry ladies, I'm just in shape. But that just shows what a punk he is, because I mean, to barge in there, it's very to behave like that in front of women, I mean, what an asshole, really. I've no respect for guys like that, and unfortunately boxing's full of them. Now I'm not saying that I can understand there's a lot of hype sometimes to attract fights, and these sort of things happen. They happened all the time in the 70s. Sometimes they serve a purpose. But this wasn't an example of that. This was just Shannon Briggs being an ass. And coming in there, not only disrespecting Klitschko, but also disrespecting Alex the Pie, disrespecting Klitschko's team, disrespecting the German press, disrespecting everyone there. And it was just, I'll give a link to the clip, and regardless of what you think of Shannon Briggs' ability, and I'm not taking away anything from him, he's a pretty good fighter. I don't think he's world class. I certainly don't think he's as good as Klitschko, but he's a good fighter. But that's, for any professional sportsman to behave in that way, shame on him. This is exactly the sort of idiots boxing doesn't need, regardless of his past achievements. This is an example of a guy that should just hang up the gloves and be done with it, because he's just embarrassing himself. And if Vitaly could beat him, I wouldn't be surprised if Vladimir could. I mean, you never know for sure in boxing, but whether or not Vladimir should take the fight, I don't know, because on one hand, it would shut Briggs up, on the other hand, you'd be basically humouring a bully. I'm not saying he's bullying Klitschko, but he's using bullying antics barging in like that, and it's pathetic. So yeah, I think it's just this is exactly the sort of guys you don't need in boxing.